So welcome back to my channel. I am Erica with Revival Threadworks, and today we're going to be making a reversible handkerchief head scarf thing. So my daughter has been wearing these really cute little handkerchief head scarves. I've got one so you can see the one that she's been wearing the most often. It's crocheted or knitted. I'm not really sure what you'd call it. I think that might be knitted, but anyway, it's just a little handkerchief scarf type thing. I don't know how to knit or crochet, so this is definitely something that I can't recreate on my own. However, I can do it with fabric. So I decided to go ahead and do this in a reversible manner. That way you can wear it with either just this. Of course, these are the fabrics that I chose. You can either wear it with this outside on the outside edge, or you can flip it over and use it on this side. So I tried to make this pattern with fat quarters. And you can, if you're really careful with the way your fat quarters are cut, you can go ahead and get the whole thing out of one. So if you only want to do one, excuse me, a one-sided headscarf, you can do that. Or if you want to do two like I have, then you can have it reversible. So again, you're going to need 1 to 2 fat quarters. If you want to use yardage, you're going to need obviously at least enough fabric to equal a fat quarter, which is 22 inches by 18 inches. So this one I've already cut. I went ahead and cut the triangle out of it. I would have cut the whole square and just cut the triangle in the middle, but because we're doing reversible, I did go ahead and just do one triangle. And then I cut my little strips for the head straps from there. You'll see that 2 of them are the full length, and then one of them is a little short, and that's because of where I cut it in here. So if if I lay these out, you'll see kind of the angle that I went at. So I was able to get the full straps plus the one square out of the one fat quarter. And like I said, if I wanted to, I could have gotten the second triangle. I would have had to make these a little bit shorter, so don't fear that this is hanging over like that. It's only because I didn't use the whole square. So anyway, what we're gonna do, I want to go ahead and show you how I got this little triangle out of this. I wanted to go ahead and show you on screen at least what we're doing here. So I'm gonna set this aside and put these aside. I'm gonna show you what I did with the fat quarter. So this fat quarter has been squared. So I just, went to all the limits of my fat quarter and I squared it all up, and then I'm going to flip it over on this side just so you can see a little bit better. But this would be a 14-inch square. So what I did is I just took my marking pen and a ruler and went from the edge and marked 14 inches on this side and then 14 inches on this side. And then we're just going to connect that point and cut out our triangle. So I have a little bit bigger of a ruler here so we can use to connect the point. So there's that point and this point. We're just going to, again, just double check and make sure that they all line up. Draw our line. Actually, we don't even need to draw a line. I don't know what I'm doing here. We're not even worried about a line. We're just going to cut it because we don't need the line. Hold your ruler, make sure you got it good. Now this can be set aside if you wanted to have this print as your strips. I will show you what I did. So my strips are 1.5 inches wide. Sorry, I didn't say that in the very beginning there, but my little strips that we worked with are 1.5 inch wide. So what I did is, because this whole piece is squared up and this is a nice even line, I went ahead and cut 2 strips at 1.5 inches like this. And then when I got to here on this particular one, I didn't have quite as big of a piece. I know that it's a fat quarter and they're both fat quarters. However, if you've ever worked with fat quarters, you know that they're not all the same size. So they don't end up being the same size from piece to piece. So the one that I got on this particular print was a little bit smaller once it was squared. So that's why I wasn't able to get the full, like this. But if you follow it like there, it would get cut off a little bit. Anyway, you just want 3 pieces that are let's see, 20, 21, 42, and so you've got about 62 inches here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sew these together to make one long strip. But for the moment, I was trying to just utilize my fat quarter. So anyway, now we're going to get to some assembly. So as I said, you've got a 14-inch square here. So if you were to try to make this with just one color, you would just cut out a 14-inch square and then divide it down the middle. Like I said, we're doing this with different colors just so we can have a reversible one. But now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pin these together. So you're going to have right side up with right side down. And we're just going to line them up as best we can. I think that it looks like I'm off just slightly, but that's okay. That tends to happen to me. I don't know. I hope I'm not the only one that happens to, but I always feel like I've got my measurements all ready to go and everything looks great. And then when I actually cut it, it ends up being off. So again, hopefully I'm not the only one that happens to. I try to be just as precise as I can possibly be, but it doesn't end up working that way. But the first thing we're going to do is sew together these two pieces. Now the areas that we want to sew are right here, this side and this side. So we want to leave this open, so do not sew this. You only want to sew 1/4 inch this way and this way. And then we're going to come back here and we're going to flip it inside out. We're going to iron it. So let's go to the machine and we're going to sew this together. Now that we're at the machine, we are literally going to just sew a quick little 1/4 inch all the way around those sides that we pinned. So there's just two sides that we want to sew together. And then we're just going to do that with a little 1/4 inch here all the way around. So just a straight stitch. And then once we do that, we're going to go back to the table and we're going to flip this inside out and we're going to iron it nice and flat. And then we're going to come back and do our straps. So now that we're back at the table and we have this all sewn together, we just did a 1/4 inch stitch on both of these sides here with the fabric right sides together. So now we are just going to turn it right side out, but let me go ahead and get some scissors and clip that real quick. Totally forgot to do that, of course. Just going to clip off that corner. Make sure that your seam is still intact. In fact, I might trim that just a little bit more, but you're just trying to reduce a bit of bulk in that corner. So then we're just going to turn it inside out and then we're going to press it. So you're going to want to take something that, you know what, I forgot to get my little point turner tool, so I'll just use my pen here that does not have the pen going forward. Okay, and then we're just going to press that, and then now we're going to press the whole thing. So just grab your iron and we're going to press it flat. So whenever we have a seam like this, we tend to get a little bit of rolling in the fabric. So you just kind of want to take your fingers and just, you know, kind of pinch it, roll it, however it is you need to do this to get this all nice and straight. And then we're just going to press this nice and flat. So we're just going to keep going till we're nice and flat. It's always helpful when you have this huge open spot over here, or this huge open side. If I didn't have this open side, this wouldn't be nearly as easy because I wouldn't be able to get my hand in there. But because I have this open side, I'm going to go ahead and use my hand. So we're going to start probably from this side because I am a righty, not a lefty. Darn it. Okay. Make sure this is as straight as we can get it. Make sure that these are as flat as we can get them. Keep ironing until we get to that other corner there. Okay, so again, we're just going to make sure this whole thing is nice and flat. So just very simple. Looks like this, and that unevenness I was talking about before seemed to work itself out a little bit. So the next thing that we're going to do is put an 1/8 inch top stitch on the same places that you sewed before. So on this side, over here and across here. You just need to go to your machine, make sure that you have a matching thread color on the top and the bottom, because this is reversible. So you want to make sure that whatever bobbin thread you have in there, you can, you know, that it matches well. This could either be a white or a pink. Same thing with up here. I would probably just do a pink. That way it goes with both. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and go over to the machine, do the 1/8 of an inch top stitch. While we are there, we are going to go ahead and sew these strips together. So like I said, these were just 1.5 inch bits from the squared up back quarter. So they're about 21 inches. 2 of them are 21 inches long. The other one's just slightly shorter than that, just because of the limitations of the angle that I had to cut. But we're going to go over to the machine. We're going to lay these straight on top of each other because these are just straight bindings. We are not worried about the angle because they are not biased bindings or anything. These are just literal straight edges that we're just going to sew together. Make sure that we're right sides together. Pin those. And now, if you want to go ahead and mark where you're going to be sewing, you can certainly do that. I typically don't mark because I use the markings on my the throat plate of my machine. But what you're going to be doing is sewing from this point to this point. And then once you sew that, we're going to trim off to within a 1/4 of an inch over here. And then it's just going to give us a nice long piece of binding. Okay. So again, while we're at the machine, we're going to do 2 different things. We're going to put an 1/8 of an inch top stitch on this, and then we're going to sew these 2 together. And then we'll come back over here and get this strap ironed up and clipped on, and then we'll move forward. So now we're back at the machine, and I went ahead and made some pin markings here. I don't know if you can see them, but I did go ahead and mark that angle right there. And the reason why I did so is because normally I use my throat plate to line this all up, but since this is just a short little distance, it's just not lining up very well. So I went ahead and just made the markings. Now I've put pink thread in my top thread as well as my bobbin, and that's because, again, this is a reversible and I don't want the colors to be off. So I went ahead and just put, you know, both colors in there, and right now we're just going to stitch all the way down that line on both little pieces of that binding. Get my pins out of the way. And sew those, and then I have the next one ready to go as well. I'm just going to chain piece those super duper fast, just because literally there is only 2 joints, that is. Let's get my pins out of the way. Okay, now we've got this binding sewn. And we're going to go ahead and just clip those 2 apart real quick, clip that thread, and then these, my little scissors that I have here are kind of curved, so I don't want to use those, but I will trim within a 1/4 of an inch. I'll probably just do it at the table so you can see, but I'm going to trim a 1/4 of an inch here, and then that will give me a big long strip of binding. So the next thing that we want to do is edge stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and put my edge stitch foot on, and that is a number 10 on a Bernina. So just switch over. Move my needle to a -5 position, which is to the left, and then we're just going to sew a quick little edge stitch on this. So I like to use my edge stitch foot because once I butt up my fabric to this little doodad right here, it gives me a super clean, nice edge. So if you just watch, if I keep my fabric pressed against this little thing right here, you're going to see that it's going to give me an absolutely perfect top stitch. So we're just going to sew all the way down. As I mentioned already, my top thread and my bobbin thread are exactly the same color, so they're a really nice complementary pink, complementary to this fabric. Okay, I'm going to turn that real quick, and hopefully you can see up here, maybe you can, maybe you can't, how nice and clean that edge is. But anyway, now we're just going to go down the other side and finish the top stitch. We're doing this in this order because the next thing that we're going to do is add the little string binding, and once we do that, we can't access the ends of these anymore. So we're going to go ahead, we're just doing the top stitch right now just so we can make sure that we get it on there properly. And Go ahead and leave the edge stitch foot on. If you have an edge stitch foot, go ahead and leave it on, because the next step with the binding, we're going to be using the edge stitch foot again. So now we're back and we have put the edge stitch on the main part of the handkerchief. So if you can see how nice and clean that edge is with the edge stitch foot, it's all the way across. And then, like I said, I put a complementary color in the back there, so it's nice and, you know, complementary. And then we sewed together a little strip. So we're going to go ahead and cut off the edge of these 1/4 of an inch. And we're going to take that off there, find the other one, and do the same. Okay, so now the next thing that we need to do is we're going to have to iron this together down the middle. So you're going to take your iron and you're going to iron this straight down the middle. Actually, you know what? The first thing that we're going to do, let me get the iron here. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is go to the end of your strip and just fold it over about 1/4 of an inch, okay? I found this out the other day when I was making my sample, that if I did this afterwards, it made it a little bit difficult in the end. So we'll go ahead and just do our little 1/4 of an inch fold right there. This is on both ends. And then the next thing we want to do is just go all the way down our strip and fold it in half and press, okay? So I'm probably not going to do this whole thing on camera, or at least not talk through the whole thing. I might speed it up, but we just want to go all the way down the strip and just carefully fold it in half, all the way down. When you get to the join position, the place where you added the other strip, go ahead and press that open, just so that it's nice and smooth and flat. And then go ahead and go about with your folding everything in half all the way down the strip. Okay, now that we've got the whole strip ironed in half, we're going to open it up again, and then we're going to take each side and fold those towards the middle and press. So take your little bitty edges here, and be careful not to burn your fingers, because it is super duper easy to burn your fingers. But just keep going along on both sides and press and iron right into the center. Okay, now that we're done with side one, we're just going to flip it over and do the exact same thing on side two. Okay, so now that we've gone through both sides and we have gotten them ironed, so you'll see that there's a mark in the middle, and then basically it just took this whole piece and 1/4'd it. So now we're going to fold it together. So put your pieces on the inside there and then fold the whole thing over, just like that, and we're going to press it and clip it as we go along. So I like to do just small little areas because it's very easy for this to pop right out. So we're just going to put a clip here and then move down a little bit, and we're going to do this all the way down until we get to the other end. So I would say put a clip about every 6 inches or so. Okay, so now that we're done, now it's time to line this all up. So the way that I have done it on my samples is, you know, super scientific, of course. We're just taking this and marking a center point. So fold that over like that, put a clip right here with your center mark. Oops. So put a clip just like that. So that gives you your center there. And then you're going to take your little binding strip here, and you're going to do the same thing. We're going to find the center mark. So, you know, just hold your piece. Oh, you know what? I need to put another clip there because that was kind of coming out a little strange. Okay, so do the same thing. Find our center mark here, which is right about here. Let me just double check and make sure because my hands moved. Okay, so right about here. Let's move this clip. Okay, so this is our center point with the clip, and this is our center point with the handkerchief part. So now we're just going to slip the handkerchief over to envelop that open edge here. So we're just going to kind of carefully, you know, open that up slide that into that little channel there, fold it right back over, and put a clip there. Now, I found that the easiest way to do this, so basically what you want to do is you want to go all the way down and get this inserted into this little channel. So let's go ahead and clip off these little ends here just so we don't end up with those in our way. And then, like I said, you're just going to go all the way down. So I would recommend the easiest way to do this is just to kind of open it up. If I were you, I would face the handkerchief part this way and have your binding up this way, so that way it's just easier for you to see where that seats in, but just kind of lay it right there on the edge, or right there in the middle of that sandwich, I guess, and keep clipping. Now, as you go along here, I would probably do clips every couple of inches just so that you make sure it's good and in there. You do not want this to be shifting out of place when you're trying to put your edge stitching on. So just keep going all the way down until you get everything enclosed here. And then we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. Real quick. Like I said, let's just go ahead and lop off these little ends here, get them out of the way, and just place our handkerchief right there in the center of that binding, just so that it kind of folds over, everything looks good. And then once we have this situated in here, we're going to take this whole thing over to the machine, and we are going to top stitch the open areas. So we're going to start here on the end, and we're going to sew this way and then all the way down, all the way across on this open edge, and then we're finished. So let's go to the machine and finish this up. So as I mentioned the last time we were at the machine, if you keep your edge stitch foot on, it's going to be very useful in this step too. So we are just going to carefully position this to where the needle is going to hit right up here at this top point, because we need to sew down and across. So it's a very, very small area. So again, just try to eyeball it and hope that you're getting where you need to be. And now we're going to turn this, and then we're just going to sew all the way down. So this edge stitch foot is going to help us keep a nice straight seam here. As we saw on the handkerchief part, it just makes a really, really nice seam. And all I'm doing right there is just tucking in some of the little raw squiggly ends there. Sometimes you have your fabric just stringing out a little bit, so that's all that was happening there, is this little strings from the fabric. So just pushing those in with my finger, and you'll see that I'm going really fast. And the reason why I'm going so fast is because, again, the edge stitch foot, as long as I keep my fabric pushed up against this, which I'm using this finger right here, see, like this, to push it up, and I'm using this finger kind of as a guide to make sure that we're all good there. As long as I make sure that we're nice and up against that edge, I can pretty much go as fast as I want, because it's really going to stay. It's going to stay where I want it to be. So then we're going to take this and just, you want to go a little bit carefully when you get to the edge of your handkerchief there. So just go a little bit slower. And then we're going to make sure that we're over the little hump. So this little guide right here, I want to make sure that it goes over the handkerchief part. So I'm going to go like one stitch at a time until I make sure it's over. Let me just make sure that that's up and that the handkerchief is under, and it is not yet. So there we go. There we go. And now we've just made sure that it's underneath. So I'm going to slightly slower on this just because my clips are a little bit closer together on the handkerchief part. But you also just kind of want to eyeball and make sure that your handkerchief has not come outside of this binding, because obviously you're trying to make sure that you got it all attached. And this edge stitch here is going to obviously attach it on the front and on the back. So this particular stitch is extremely important, because remember, this whole thing is wide open and you just kind of inserted this inside. So this edge stitch is a very important part of assembly. So just make sure that you're good and you're catching the handkerchief, i.e. the handkerchief is inside. It hasn't come out in any way, in any place. Just keep going. We are almost to the end of the handkerchief part, and then it'll be smooth sailing from there. So almost done. Like I said, I'm just kind of with my fingers making sure that the handkerchief is still inside the binding area. And then now, okay, like I said, we are smooth sailing from this point on. All we're going to do is just let this run. I'm not very I don't have a whole lot of hand-eye coordination. That's why I have to stop when I remove the clips. So I'm sorry about that. Sometimes I can manage it. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes my my hands and my brain aren't wired together and I mess up. So that's why I'm stopping or slowing down when I get to the clips, just so I don't mess that up. Okay, and then down here I did come unfolded just a little bit. So I'm just going to use my fingers to put that back. Definitely to the end, and we're going to do the exact same thing on this end that we did on the other end, which is we're going to get to that corner, this corner right here, and then we're going to go up. So we'll have to turn it just a little bit, so just kind of slow down when you get to the end there. Okay. And now we're going to turn this and finish this off. Just sew off the edge. And there you have it. All right, we are back at the table, and folks, just like that, we are all done. So this is just a real quick project. It's a reversible handkerchief head scarf thing. I mean, obviously you just kind of put it over your head and tie it down here. You have a nice long strap, coordinating pieces made from, this is from 2 fat quarters. Like I said, this is just to have a little bit of difference on each side to make it reversible. However, you could do it from just 1 fat quarter. So it's a very easy project, super cute. In my pictures, I'll see if I can get my daughter to wear it so you can see what it actually looks like. But I just, again, one of my quicker projects, but I've been wanting to make this ever since I saw my daughter wearing the crochet one. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and leave me a comment below and let me know what you want to see me make next. Hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.